Hello, everybody, and welcome to Glendale Community College's Leadership Speakers Series. My name is Laura Hinau, and I'm the Program Advisor at Glendale Community College's Career Services. And we are excited to have you join us live this afternoon. The purpose of the speaker series is to learn about the different perspectives from leaders who share their inspiring leadership experience and transformation. So today we are looking forward to talking with our first speaker of the fall 2021 semester, Dr. Alexander Patrick. And before we get started, I want to let the audience know that we're going to be including a Q&A towards the end of the presentation. So please submit your questions for our guest in the comments section at any time during the presentation, and we will get to those questions. So to kick it off, I'm going to ask Isel Silva, whom I work with in Career Services, to introduce herself and our guest today. Thanks, Isel.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. My name is Isel Silva, and I'm the Director of Career Services here at GCC. I have the absolute pleasure of introducing our first speaker of this semester. Dr. LeBrian Alexander Patrick, who typically goes by Alexander, is GCC's Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and he is in his 6th year serving as residential faculty in the Social Sciences Department teaching sociology. He is originally from Louisiana, where he earned his undergraduate degree in anthropology, his master's and doctorate degree in sociology and women and gender studies, focusing on intersectionality, criminology, race, ethnicity, and qualitative research methodologies. Dr. Patrick supports GCC in future-focused efforts, developing a diverse, equitable, and inclusive academic and work environment that ensures we are a college open to and ready for all. He understands that centering DEI efforts across the college and district will help improve not only student success, but also employees' success as we create equitable means that critically target those who have been historically marginalized and underserved. In Patrick's own words, he says, "My vision is simple, a shift to an equity-minded educational culture and environment. I do this work because I believe that change is not only inevitable, but necessary. I know that we have the power to grow and evolve not only as people, but as an institution to serve the needs of all. As an educator, he is motivated each and every day to continue this work because of his students and colleagues and the huge impact we have in each other's lives as we work towards our dreams." Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Patrick. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Good. So before we begin our set of leadership questions that we typically ask all of our leadership speakers, we like to start off this presentation with what we call like rapid fire questions. It's probably one of my favorite parts of the discussion because it just allows us and our audience just to get to know our leadership speakers and just learn some fun, interesting things about you. So Laura's going to ask some fun rapid fire questions and just answer with the first thing that comes to mind. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Isel, and thank you for joining us, Dr. Patrick. Okay, the first question: which travel destination is your favorite?
Oh, of all the places that I've been, I really, really appreciate Mexico. I really love it. I love the culture. I love the people. And I've gotten a chance to visit a few times, and I'm really, really thankful for that.
Okay. What specifically where in Mexico?
I think of all the places I've visited, I had an opportunity to visit Guanajuato with the Maricopa Community College District, and that was probably one of the most impactful visits that I had because it was not your typical touristic destination, and I got to actually be there with people who are there, spend their whole lives there, and it was just a wonderful experience. I learned a lot during that trip.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Okay, the next question: which leader do you admire the most?
Okay, so I have two. The people that are well known, I would say Oprah is my favorite leader because I think that she's used her platform not just for fame and fortune, but also to help humanity. And listening to her speak restores my faith in humanity because she is always helping people. As much as she has, she's always giving back for some reason. You know, she's giving back to as many people as possible. And the people who aren't well known, I'd say my grandmother. My grandma, she's the leader of our family, and she raised me from my childhood, and she's been my favorite person on the planet. I appreciate how much of a leader she is, but also she's like one of the most fun people I know.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Next question. What is one positive thing that you do on a daily basis?
I take naps, and that I'm sure that does not sound like it's the most positive thing, but I spend my life doing academic things throughout the day, and then I'm an artist in the evening. So between my academic life and my artistic life, I take a nap because I think that self-care is very, very important. And for me, I need to rest my mind a little bit before I started right back up to be physical for the rest of the evening and do art throughout the community. So I take naps.
Yeah, and for those of us that don't know, Dr. Patrick is a professional dancer. So I think that's really awesome how you do just a variety of things. I think that's great. Okay, the next question is, what's your favorite food?
Oh, probably sweet potatoes. I love sweet potatoes. I will just bake an entire pan of sweet potatoes and eat them every day. I love them.
I currently have sweet potatoes sitting in like my little oven on the counter.
They're good.
Do you add anything to them, or?
They're probably not the healthiest sweet potatoes because I put cinnamon and sugar and butter all over them. So it probably is not the healthiest, but they taste delicious.
Like
That's
a little
how you do
treat. I love that.
Yeah, that's how you do it. Okay.
Sounds like the best way to eat sweet potatoes to me.
The only way. Okay, the next question, fill in the blank. In one word, leadership is?
Service.
Okay. The last rapid fire question is fill in the blank. In one word, diversity, equity, and inclusion is?
I'm gonna say humanity. Of course, you gave me 3 words that I have to put into one. Humanity.
Laura's keeping you on your toes.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, we learned so much about you. So thanks for participating in that. I think we learned a lot. Our audience did learn a lot about you. So for our audience, just as a reminder, please submit your questions in the comments so that we can get those to Dr. Patrick. So now for the real Q&A questions.
Okay.
Here we go. All right. So the first question is, tell us about yourself and how you came to Glendale Community College and your current positions.
Okay. So how far do we go back? I'll try to make this story short because I could probably talk about me all day, but I'll try to make it short. I came from a family where my mother she's only 14 years older than I am. So she had me when she was in the 9th grade and she dropped out of school. And I have 3 other brothers and sisters that are younger. And I grew up with her, but her parents and my dad's parents, they helped to take care of me and my siblings. And I had no intentions of really going to college. I just planned to go to the military because I wanted to have some money to get out of poverty, to get out of where we lived. We live in a suburb area that's just north of New Orleans, just above Lake Pontchartrain. And I kind of wanted to not be there. So I wanted to go to the military, and I did go to the military when I was 17. I had my mom sign the papers because you can have parental permission at 17. So she signed the papers. I went to the military. I was in the Army until I was 25. But during that time, I went also part-time to college, and I finished college, and I was intending on just being an officer in the military. And my old roommate said, "You're smart. You should do something else." And I was like, I don't really know about all that. So I ended up in the McNair program because my old roommate filled out the application for me because I wasn't going to do it at that time. It's one of those things where you don't really know that you're that smart because you didn't come from a place where college was really a thing. So someone else sees it and they help and put a little effort into getting you there. So I said, okay, since they accepted me, I'll do this. And that program prepared you for grad school. And I didn't realize what the program was until like a while of being in there, and they wanted me to take the GRE and study for the GRE. And I was like, I don't really want to do all of that. I don't want to fill out 10 applications for grad school. I don't have this intention. So I did like part of the work. I was that student that didn't want to do all of those things because it just wasn't a thing for me. It wasn't my life, wasn't my home life. And I got accepted into all the schools. I got financial resources to be able to attend the school. So I said, maybe there is something to this. So I gave it a shot. I did well in grad school, and I started teaching while I was in grad school, and I've been teaching now for 12 years. I've taught in a number of couple of community colleges and a couple of universities. And I taught in Westchester, Pennsylvania, taught anthropology there and sociology. I taught in Louisiana, teaching at a few different, at a university, Louisiana State University and Baton Rouge Community College. And I also taught high school. I taught the dual enrollment programs in high school, teaching sociology. And then I went to Georgia, and I lived there for a couple of years teaching at Clayton State University. And I moved back home because my mom has a lot of illnesses. So I was in New Orleans at Xavier, and it just wasn't the right fit for me. And I ended up here in the desert, where I didn't know if I would actually like the desert. But once I got here, I loved GCC. My job was my favorite part of being in the desert. I'm still adjusting to the desert, but it feels a lot more like home now since I'm in year 6 and I've spent most of the summer here in the heat. But I guess trying to wrap this up is, I've always worked in the areas of DEI, but not consistently in those areas, meaning I've always worked as a part of diversity, equity, and inclusion committees and councils at the schools that I was in, and I was working towards these same efforts just because of my academic background. And I've been working with the Diversity Advisory Council across the district, and we were trying to work to, and we're still working towards getting positions like these on all of the colleges. But our college stepped up and said, hey, we really want to have a position like this. And they started moving forward with these efforts. And so they opened up a position for a part-time position for a faculty member to work towards this. And we had, there was an extensive interview process, and that's how I ended up here. I guess that's the short-ish version of my story.
Well, we have a question a little bit about your leadership role specifically as like our DEI director at GCC. But before we move on to there, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it's great for other people to hear individual stories and see, you know, the challenges that they might have had to overcome in order to attend college and pursue a career. And part of your story, you were sharing maybe some barriers that you have had to overcome along your career journey. So I think for some of our students, you know, as you know, we have a very diverse population of students, and we all come from different backgrounds. And so in regards to your own personal experience, what did you find to be the most challenging barriers, and how did you feel like you overcome those? It sounded like you had some people in your ear like, hey, did you know? And people motivating you. But aside from that, like, how do you feel like you overcome some of the barriers you encountered along your career journey?
Okay. And you're specifically talking about my barriers as a student.
Yeah, as a student, and then even like migrating into more of like your professional role.
Mm-hmm. I think my biggest barrier is that I didn't come from a family where college was a thing, where everyone went to college, everybody knew about college. I didn't go to a high school where everybody, like even our advisor in high school, it wasn't that the advisors came to you and started talking about college. You actually had to go to them to find this information out. But because I didn't come from that background, I didn't know a lot about college. I just knew that I didn't want to be where I was. And my first solution was to go to the military, because I have military personnel in my family. My uncles, I have a couple of uncles that went to the military. So they had things, they had ways of moving out. So that's what I looked toward. But I learned while I was in the military that if I went to college and I got a bachelor's degree, I could go be an officer without having to do some of the other things that I would have to do to work my way all the way up there. So I had an unintended plan to kind of accelerate my life into leadership in the military. But because of what that unintended plan was, it took me to the college campus. And while I was on the college campus, I was working toward my plan, but I had people who did know about college, people who did know things about grad school. I didn't know what grad school was. I didn't know all the steps to get to where I am today. But the thing about my mother and my grandmother is that anything I wanted to try to do as I was growing up, they would say, well, we don't have the resources to help you do it, but if you can figure out how to do it, then go for it. They never told me anything was a limit on me. They just told me that they didn't have the resources to be able to help me get there. But if I could figure it out, then go for it. So they always let me try something. So as people came into my life giving me advice and information that I didn't have before, I didn't walk onto a college campus saying, oh, well, I know what I want to do. I know what I'm going to do. I just wanted to be a leader in the military so I could make money, and get out of poverty. So, but I was open to listening, and I was open to those people that helped me. They took the initiative for me where I didn't have that initiative myself, and I didn't fight them on that. So if I was to be talking to a student or anyone who wants to move toward leadership, listen to the people who are actually in leadership positions. And I'm saying in leadership positions in terms of those people that know things that you don't know. A leader does not have to be your college president. It can be your classmate. As I told you, my old roommate filled out the application for me to enter the McNair program. To me, she was a leader because she knew something that I didn't know in that moment, and I was open to it, and I wasn't closed off from listening to it. So when you find leaders, you can find them in some of the, I guess, non-traditional places. I don't know.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. No, I love that because I think oftentimes people think a leader is a job title, but I don't think people understand that leaders are everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you sharing that because I don't know, I think that could be something that really resonates with our audience and our students as well. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really great information. You teach, but now you're in this new role. And why do you think that our campus needs this type of leadership role as a director for diversity, equity, and inclusion?
That's a good question. And I think there are a number of reasons that we need it. I think more than anything right now, people are, well, let's just say this. We've had great leaders and we've had not so great leaders, but those leaders have done some similar things where they've brought a lot of issues to the surface, whether they be good, whether they be bad issues. I think that as a campus, as a college, even just as an education system, our job is to challenge what we think of as common sense, what we've grown up being socialized about. It doesn't mean that we have to change your mind about it, but we have to open your minds to understanding that there are so many different ways that people live around the world, and neither one of them is particularly better than another. It may just be we're more accustomed to one than someone else is accustomed to something else. But I think our job is to make everybody feel welcomed here. And I think what you have on your campuses and the locations of those services, all of those things say to students and employees, whether or not we want you here, whether or not we want your presence here, we value the knowledge, the experience that you bring. And I think this position is one of those positions that's able to say, hey, we recognize the value of our differences, and we want you to know that you are welcome here regardless of who you are as a person and where you come from, what your background is. The conversations that we have, they're not easy to have. And I will say my career has been a career of having difficult conversations, whether I'm in this position or I'm in the classroom. I have the conversations that people don't want to have. So this position is one of those conversations that brings out the elephant in the room. We not only talk about the elephant in the room, we talk about the beauty of the elephant in the room. We also talk about the ugly parts of the elephant in the room. It's not the easiest situation to be in, but it is one that is necessary. And I think having this position, our college is saying, hey, there are tough topics that we have to have, tough conversations that we have to have, and we're not always paying attention to them. So let us have someone here that can help us pay attention to those issues that we may not be addressing and help us find solutions on solving those issues or working towards improving the lives of the people who come to us for education, the people who come to us for work, and help each other along the way. So I think, to me, that's the value of having this position. And I think that we should have this position throughout the district. We should have it at the district level, and all of our colleges need this because they're all people. And that's the one similarity we have, whether or not, regardless of the position we're in, whether we are faculty, staff, administration, we are people before anything else. And this position helps us remember the humanity in all of us.
Yeah, you're right. We don't have this position at the other colleges, but I'm just curious, having you said all that, what's your vision going forward? How do you want to see the climate at Glendale for DEI?
So, as I think you all said in my intro, my vision is very, very simple. There's no one size fits all when it comes to DEI. But what I do want for us to have is an equity-minded approach to how we do things. And if we're thinking about equity, then it takes us back to saying whatever it is that we create, whatever policies we have, who's being served by those policies and who is not being served by those policies, practices, procedures that we're developing, programs that we're developing, who's being served and who's not being served. What are the reasons that people are being served? Why are they not? Is this a program for everyone? Is it a program that's not for everyone? But we have to have justifications around those things. But if we understand the impacts and who's being served and who is not being served, then we will always be reevaluating what it is that we're doing. It is an ongoing process because who we serve today is not going to be who we're going to serve next year or the year after that. It's going to be very different. So then if we're thinking in an equity-minded way, we will always shift our services to meet the needs of those people that we have in front of us, including our colleagues and our students. That's my vision, is that we always think that way with whatever it is that we create.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. One of the things that I wanted to follow up in regards to your response to the question that we had asked previously was you talking about having to have these uncomfortable conversations. And luckily or unluckily for you, it's something that you are doing in your classroom as a faculty member, but also in your role as our DEI director. So for a lot of people, having difficult conversations is difficult. So how do you, right? So for students as they navigate their leadership journey one day and as they, approach individuals, conversations, peer colleagues, right? And different roles that they might have, what are some pieces of advice of how people can maybe handle like difficult conversations? Because it's not something that we, want to have, but sometimes we have to have in professional environments or in work environments, right? And as somebody that maybe has to do that often, do you have any like pieces of advice for people that might have to have difficult conversations, or how one can approach difficult conversations in like a work environment?
Well, the first thing is it's a process. So that means that we will mess up from time to time. So don't get mad at yourself if you do happen to mess up or someone else messes up and the situation becomes a little sticky. So I think vulnerability is probably the key, and not just vulnerability for the person who's asking the question, but vulnerability for the person who has to answer the question. This is a two-way conversation here. So I think creating creating a setting where it is okay to ask questions and be vulnerable is one of the most important things. People can tell when you're genuine about what it is that you're asking. We are very intuitive beings, so we can tell whether somebody is genuine. And for those that when we can't tell that, then it might be really good to just say, hey, I am struggling with this, but I know this is something that might be upsetting to hear. Letting the person know before you go in that I need to ask this question, but I don't ask this question in a malicious way. I'm asking this question because this is something that has troubled me, and I don't know if that is the intent, and I want to find out that intent before I respond. And if you're a person who's hearing something that could be offensive or something that could be off-putting, ask yourself, why do I feel this offense? Does this person know whether or not they are offending me? Do they know whether or not whatever it is that they're saying is off-putting? Because they may not know. They may not know, and then all of a sudden we get angry, and then the conversation is over, but we didn't realize that the person wasn't aware that they were saying something that could be offensive. However, if we've taken that moment to say, okay, maybe they don't know, let me inform them that the way that you put that question or said whatever that thing is, it could be offensive to someone like me. Whatever that description of who you are at that moment is, you might change their life in that moment. They may never ask the question the way that they asked it before, because now they are fully aware. I think when we get angry in those moments, we leave a heightened sense of ignorance. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean just not knowing, whether that not knowing is on your part or it's on the other person's part. We didn't take a moment to educate that person on something, and we didn't take a moment to try to really hear them. And I think the discomfort for me, I think colleges are uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable because you've come to us as students, and now we're saying what you learned a long time ago. That's not the only thing to know. Here's something else that you totally do not agree with because someone else agrees with it. Education begins when we are uncomfortable. If you came here and everything you knew, everything you learned made you comfortable, then we as a college didn't do our job, because we just reinforced things that you already knew before you came here. So if you go into a conversation to learn something, prepare yourself to be uncomfortable. If you open yourself up to have someone ask you questions about something, prepare yourself to be uncomfortable, because they may ask something you didn't even think about was an issue. So I think, and all of this discomfort I'm talking about is just another way of saying prepare yourself to be vulnerable. Open up and say, I don't know this, or it's okay that I don't know this. Let me learn from you.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Laura. I'm like resonating. I love that so much. What were you going to say, Laura?
No, I was going to say, we did have a comment as you were speaking from our president, who says that she says, I appreciate this statement, ask questions and be vulnerable, something often difficult to allow.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, and even when it comes to leadership, I know sometimes when I work with students, it's, sometimes we get very complacent or very comfortable with where we're at because it feels safe, right? And it feels good. But I think oftentimes for individuals to tap into their full potential, you have to make yourself a little uncomfortable, because that uncomfortability, being uncomfortable, is really where that growth happens, right? So I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm also kind of curious, for people that are wanting to grow and don't know how, like, what have you found, like, in your own experience? Like, how have you maybe challenged yourself in ways that, maybe you didn't think, like, oh, I never thought I could do this, and here I am, right? Like, what made you kind of push forward and put yourself in that being uncomfortable to kind of help you see, like, your potential? I don't even know if I worded that right, but I'm just kind of curious.
I think I understand it, and I'm going to give you a little insight into my life as I started dance. I started dancing when I was 27, and that is old for dancers. Many dancers probably don't dance beyond that age because we're starting to age, but I started it at that time. But part of the reason that I started it was because I had a lot of difficult things going on in my life. I was in grad school. There was a lot going on that was creating stress around my life. So I said, okay, I need to find something that takes me out of this space. So I tried dancing, and I was in class with 12-year-olds. Mind you, I could not lift my leg beyond like 90 degrees. I don't even know if I could get it at 90, which is my waist height. I don't think I could. But these little girls their legs were like way up here. I'm like, where's your muscle? How does it do that? So I was intrigued by this. But I also had some of those students say to me, you're as old as my dad. That was an interesting thing to hear, but it wasn't, I was living in a reality. The reality is I'm trying something that I never did before. I should be embarrassed doing this, with these 12-year-old, and I was the only male 12-year-old girls in the class, but I don't feel that embarrassment because this is a new challenge for me. I think that if we are able to put ourselves in challenging situations, to know that whether or not you succeed, and I'm going to say I put succeed in air quotes because we have to change our definition of what success looks like. We have an idea of where we want to be. However, life happens along the way, and where you end up getting to is probably going to be better than where you started if you continue on, because I don't see success as, a particular place that you get to. I think of success as the courage to just never stop, to never give up, because whether you reach that place, you'll reach somewhere better than where you were in the first place. And I think that for people who want to take the challenge of pushing themselves to something new, try to work towards that thing. It's not saying that it's going to be easy all the time. However, you're going to learn something from that. Even if you fail, you will learn what not to do the next time, but you won't give up, and you try it again and you do it a better way, or you do it a different way, if that makes sense. So I think if we have the idea that success is just the courage not to give up, you will push yourself when you challenge yourself, and you will come out better on the other side. Whether you reach that particular goal that you thought you were trying to work towards, you might exceed that. You might go far beyond that. And that is what I've done in my life. I am far beyond what I ever thought I was going to do, which was just go to the military and retire in the military and be okay with life that way. I was going to be okay with people telling me what to do and go over here, do this thing, fight here. I was going to be okay with that. Now I'm in I have way more education than I ever thought I'd have. I live in a place I never thought I would live. I have friends and that I never thought I would have. I dance way better than I ever thought I would, just because I just had the courage not to give up, even when it was difficult.
That's awesome. I mean, there's a lot of things that we want to do in life, and we just don't have the courage to do them. And I guess it takes that to kind of help you just do the things, become successful. And I'm glad that you mentioned all of that, because one of my questions to you was going to be, what does success mean to you? And you answer that so perfectly. But I want to ask you, what does it mean to be a leader? Because we have, our students watching this, and they may not think that they have those leadership qualities or think about becoming a leader. So, what does it mean to be a leader?
Mm-hmm. So while I was in grad school, I believe it was during that time, I realized I was also the president at one point of the Black Graduate and Professional Student Organization at Louisiana State University. We didn't have that many Black students there. We also have an HBCU that's only 15 minutes away. It's Southern University there. But I realized during that time that as the president, you were doing so many things. It's way different from just being a member of the organization. So for me, I learned that leadership is just service. We think of leaders as being, oh, they're way up here. They're the face. They're servants. That's what they are. They serve people. If you're going to be a leader, then you're going to be prepared to serve all of the people as a part of whatever organization that you're leading. And I think of if you want to be a leader, then you have to prepare for a life of service. You are there to ensure that the needs of those people that are in that organization, their needs are being met and they're able to not only survive, but also thrive in that organization. So if you're looking for an understanding of leadership, I would say that leaders are they're servants for the people.
And this is also a good reminder that at GCC, we have a wonderful student leadership area, right, where students can get involved and hopefully allow them to tap into their unknown potential and start developing their leadership skills if they're interested as well. When we were doing our rapid fire questions, you kind of touched upon like role models and stuff in your life or people who you look up to. And you kind of shared throughout your story a few people that have kind of maybe nudged you along the way and helped you fill out applications and do all the wonderful things. But maybe if we can kind of dive a little bit deeper into that, and in addition to maybe naming a person that you felt had a tremendous impact on your on you being a leader, can you also maybe share how this individual has maybe impacted your life? I know oftentimes individuals have mentors formally or informally. I think a lot of times as students, some students maybe seek out mentors but don't know how, or sometimes you don't even realize, like if I look back on my own career journey, I don't think I had formal mentors along the way, but looking back and reflecting, I can see like, oh, this was probably informally, like these individuals were these informal mentors. So did you have anybody who was like a formal mentor or informal mentor, and how has that relationship kind of impacted you?
Yes. So first, I will say that I have tons of informal mentors. They don't even know that they're my mentors, but I'll talk about them in a moment. I'm going to first talk about the formal mentor that probably has had one of the biggest impacts on me, and that was my master's thesis chair. And he was also my dissertation chair, but for the first 2 years, and then I switched to another. But based on his mentorship, he encouraged me to take on another dissertation chair because she had more of the knowledge and the information that I needed for the dissertation that I was doing. That was Dr. Matthew Lee. He works in institutional research at Louisiana State University, but at that time he was a sociology faculty member. I took in my senior year of college, and I worked with him for 8 years after my senior year. Maybe I think it was about 8 years I've known him during that time. I will say the reason why I operate the way that I do in terms of this position that I'm specifically in is because of him. I had a very, very tough time in grad school in my own personal relationship, and my mentor, he knew that I had trouble at home, but I was still going, and he would try to encourage me to go to the counselor all the time, but I never really went. And then one day I came to school and I had a black eye, and he got up from his desk, he put on his jacket, and he walked me to the counselor. And I went to the counselor from then on. It wasn't until he got up and he took me to this service that I said, okay, this is useful. He knew something that I didn't know. And in this current position that I'm in, I encourage those people that can help students help each other with something that they may really know that the other person doesn't know, but they need a service. Take that person. Don't just tell them where it is. Take them to that place. So he showed me what someone working in this position should be doing, even though that's not what he did. He was just a leader. He was a mentor. He cared for me. He told me, this is how you should be treated as a person. This is not what should be walking into my office. So I'm going to take you to do this. I'm going to stop what I'm doing and I'm going to do this for you. I think of him when I think of one of the leaders that has had the most impact on me in terms of mentoring. Now, in terms of all of those informal mentors, that's all the people that are around me. I would tell any student, any colleague, pay attention to the people that are around you because each of us comes with our own strengths. We all come with our own weaknesses. We can learn from one another, but that's only if we're willing to take the time to look at what this person does. Maybe I could try what it is that they're doing, or maybe I could talk to that person about what it is that you do that makes you great at this thing that I might need a little bit of work in. So, again, that brings in that vulnerability. I am willing to say, hey, I don't do this that well, but I see that you do it well. Can you help me figure out how to do this kind of thing? So that's why I say I have all these informal mentors that don't even know that they're my mentor. I just pay attention to what they do.
Yeah, that totally resonates with me as well, because when I think back at all of the people that have helped me, up until today, it's like, I'm so grateful that they cared enough, like how you said, that just to, guide me to resources, thinking about years ago, but even on campus, I feel like I have mentors on campus that have helped me get to the point where I am today. So, and then I always try to as well, with the students to also do that. So those are some really great points. So I have a question, what do you think that the key, we want to kind of also raise students to be leaders as well. So what are the key developments or the what is needed so we can get these next generation to be leaders? Like how should we prepare them, or what do you think is necessary for them to understand that they can be a leader, and how can they go about that?
Mm-hmm. Well, as I stated earlier, that I believe leadership is a life of service. I think two of the main ingredients that students need in order to begin their leadership journeys and push themselves on those journeys is one, critical thinking. I don't think we teach enough critical thinking prior to students getting to college. And I say that just because I see how, in general, sometimes all over the world, across our country, we may not always treat people kindly. We may not think beyond what's right in front of us to be able to see things that are intangible. But I think if we're able to challenge the ways that we think and learn from one another and encourage that critical thinking in our students, which is what I believe that's one of the primary values of college, is that regardless of whatever class you're taking, we are teaching you critical thinking in these different areas, whether that's mathematics or sociology course, whether it's biology or public safety or automotive services. You're learning critical thinking about some particular issue, some particular aspect of life. So I think for students, I would say engage in critical thinking classes, engage in critical dialogue, and don't be afraid of things that are not what you're used to. And the second ingredient is compassion. If you're going to be a leader and you're going to serve people, then you have to actually care about them. It's difficult to lead people when you don't care for them, because they can pick up whether or not you care for them. And it's going to be harder for you to, sort of encourage them to do whatever it is that you're trying to get them to do, because you're not showing that you have compassion for them. So I think if you have that compassion, then you will pay attention to the people that you're leading, and you will know when something is needed, something is missing, and then you use your critical thinking skills to say, well, what do we know about this issue? What don't we know about this issue? Where can we get the information that's missing? And what can we do? What can we implement in order to improve the situation? So I think critical thinking and compassion, building those qualities will help them on their leadership journeys.
Wow. Well, time flies when we're having fun. We are at 12:50 now, and we had a few more questions, but I think, I don't know, I feel like that's a really nice spot to wrap it up at. Unless you had any other thing you wanted to ask, Laura?
No, but I do want to know if you have anything that you kind of want to end this presentation with, Dr. Patrick. Any last parting words?
Ooh, that's tough Yeah. I feel like that's the hardest question you've asked, because now I just got to think outside of the box now. Um, I don't know who's listening to this live stream. I don't know how far and wide, and I think that's one of the beauties, is that I get a chance to sit here and just talk to two colleagues and not know who's actually listening. For anyone who is listening, I hope that there's something in this conversation that has been said that will help you along your journey. I do want everyone to know that if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me. Take a sociology class if you want to have your mind blown and challenged. I am totally okay with doing that. And we have plenty of wonderful faculty across this college, across this district. We have plenty of wonderful staff members and administrators. Don't be afraid to talk to us. Remember, you have not because you ask not. We are people just like you. The worst thing that we can say is no to a question that you ask, but the answer is always going to be no if you never ask, which is why I don't mind asking those weird and uncomfortable questions, because the worst they can say is no, and it's already no if I don't ask. That's all I have for you.
Well, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to share about your transformational journey from college to leadership, your path. Everything that you spoke about has been amazing and interesting to learn more about you as an individual and your contributions to our campus. Well, I have one comment here. I have two comments, actually. Our president, when you were talking about success, she mentioned success is the courage to never give up. Thank you, Dr. Patrick. And then I have another comment. Thank you, Dr. Patrick. Amazing presentation. When you want to learn to play piano, you practice playing piano. What do you suggest to do? What do you suggest to do? Grow your ability to show compassion.
I think the biggest thing in terms of growing your ability to show compassion is to talk to people you don't know. Talk to people you don't know anything about. Talk to people who you think you'd have the least amount in common with, because you might learn that you're not so different. You come in a different package, but we face similar issues. And there are going to be people who are going to be totally different from you that you think you have the most in common with. But if you talk to them, you learn you have nothing in common with them. You just might look like them, and that's about it. So I think challenging yourself to talk to people who you think you have nothing in common with, you come from different backgrounds, talking to those people will open your eyes to some of the issues they face. And I think it's harder to not care when you know people. So if you get to know someone who's different from you, it helps to build the compassion for that person in their life.
Yes, communication is the key. That's really great advice. So I guess we will be ending our presentation. So thank you again for joining us today, Dr. Patrick.
Thank you.
For our viewers, I hope you enjoyed today's discussion, and that, next month we're going to have another leader that we're going to be speaking with for our second series for the fall semester.
Yes. And again, thank you. For those of you that are on social media, don't forget to follow Career Services on social media to get the latest updates for events and career tips. You could find us at GCCAZ Career Services on Instagram and Career Services on Facebook, and we're on LinkedIn as well. So we hope that you stay connected and that you join us again in October when we bring our second speaker for the fall 2021 semester.
And with that, we will sign off, and we look forward to seeing everybody next month. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
See you later.
Bye.